What's going on, guys? This is Gumby, and we're going into how to play Lucio. Lucio is by far my favorite hero to play as in Overwatch. Not only is he one of the most fun characters that you can pick up and play, but he's probably one of the most versatile ones that you can pick up as well. And my goal with this guide is to go into how to play him and how to fill many different roles within each game. Now, I'm going to be splitting up this guide into two major points. The first being a general overview of things you need to know before playing Lucio, and the second being the three different play styles that you're going to be juggling between within each game. First up is going to be controls and keybinds. And before we do anything else, I'm going to need everybody to go into options, click on controls, go over to Lucio, then go to backwards wall riding and turn that on. For some reason, a lot of players in my Masters games don't even know this option exists, although in their defense it should be on by default, but that's a whole nother story. Either way, this is what's going to allow you to do some crazy maneuvers, be able to look at your enemy while you're backwards wall riding and get out of crazy options, but we'll get into that later. Now for actual keybinds. On the screen here, you can see what I've actually got set up. A lot of people are going to tell you differently, what's better, what's worse, but to be honest, I'm going to say most everything is going to be preference. Now, I say most everything because there is one thing that everyone absolutely has to do, and that is make sure that your jump is bound to either left or right click. Now, what this is going to allow you to do is spam that jump button. Unlike what a spacebar is going to let you do, a mouse click can be spammed like crazy, which is really going to let you take advantage of the speed boost Lucio gets off of walls, as well as just wall riding in general is going to be easier for you. Now, if you look at some players, like DSP Stanky, he changes his spacebar to crossfade, and you look at players like me, I've got boop on mouse wield, I don't know why, but it's all going to be preference. The only thing I want you guys to take from all of this is that you make sure you have jump on a mouse click. Everything else from there is going to be entirely preference. Alright, now for wall riding. Wall riding is going to be an extremely important mechanic. While Lucio's skill floor is low, in order for you to be the best, you need to be able to wall ride fluidly. And I mean be able to see a spot and get there ASAP. Wall riding is what gives you your mobility, evasion, allows you to stall points out, and allows you to chase kills, because aggressive Lucio is good. We'll get into more of that later when I actually get into playstyles. Just make sure that you can wall ride. Now, there are already countless wall riding guides out there that go into the nuanced mechanics of how wall riding works and how to wall ride better. Some guides that'll even go into specific getaways and jumps on specific maps. Now, I don't want to bog this entire guide down with how to wall ride and the nuanced mechanics of it. I will link a couple of my favorites in the description. All I'm going to say is that practice makes perfect. No matter how many guides you watch, no matter how many tips you get from every other guide, the only way you're going to get better is by actually playing and by actually practicing. So jump into that private match, jump into some quick play games, and try out some different getaways and some wall ride options that you think you might be able to do. Once you got those perfected, then you know you're comfortable with wall riding, and then you're ready to jump into that comp game. Now, the last thing I want to touch on in the overview portion of the guide is Lucio's boop. This move is insane, and you need to be using it whenever you can. This move can do everything from peel for your team to get environmental kills to completely negate someone's ult because you knocked them out of range. The only thing I really want to say on the portion with the boop is to drill it into your minds to use this thing whenever possible and never underestimate the usefulness of this move. Now, this is where things get a little complicated. These are the different play styles that you're going to be adopting as Lucio. Now, keep in mind, this isn't Season 1 Lucio anymore. You can't just exist in the backline and benefit the entire team because you have 30 meters of ranged heals on everybody. You're now an extremely engaged, flexible support who has a huge impact on how the entire match actually plays out. A good Lucio makes a good team better and can help a bad team work together better. And no matter which of the following playstyles you're using, communication is key, and I mean communicating everything. If your team needs to know when you're speed boosting, where heals are, if you're going to sneeze, I mean everything. Speed boosting now. Winston's on point alone. Focus Winston. Medic down.
Nice.
I'm not saying you have to shot call, but as long as you're communicating constantly with your team, then you should be just fine. Now, the first playstyle we're going to go into is aggressive Lucio. Now, this is the kind of Lucio that we've seen pop up a lot more frequently ever since that Lucio 2.0. Now that he has insane mobility off of wall riding, now that his kill potential is higher with faster projectile speed and more damage on his projectiles, Lucio has a surprising amount of kill potential, especially when played right. Firstly, don't be afraid to chase kills. You're fast. If you see somebody running away with 20 health left, chase that. You want to, of course, gauge the situation first. If your team needs you, don't leave them all alone. But if you can get in and out safely without leaving your team without a healer, do it. The more experience you have on Lucio, the better you'll be able to measure the risk versus reward in these kinds of scenarios. But in general, Lucio is great at being able to pick off low health targets. Secondly, take threats off of high ground. If you can get there, take it from them. If you see a soldier or a widow sitting up top, get in there, boop them off, and let your team have a field day. Just be careful if it's a McCree, as now that his flashbang slows, he's got the best odds of killing you out of anybody if you're trying to do that. Now, lastly, make sure you're engaging with your team and don't be afraid to get in there. Yeah, you are squishy, you got 200 health, but you can be up in the front lines thanks to your mobility, and you're extremely hard to hit when you know how to wall rat effectively. Now, I'm not saying front line, but don't be afraid to be up with your front line. If you play Lucio right, you shouldn't have to worry. Alright, next playstyle on the list is going to be the Heal and Peel, also known as passive Lucio. Lucio's got surprisingly decent healing, although it is in a pretty short range. So if your team needs the healing, you can take over that role as primary healer. At least temporarily. Now, if your Mercy goes down or your Ana goes down, you need to take over that role as heals because that's the only source that your team is getting it from. And your goal is to make that little number in the center that shows how many targets you're healing to be as big as possible. Just make sure on that character select screen that you're not making Lucio your sole primary healer. Now, the reason I call this the Heal and Peel is because you're not focusing on just healing. You want to make sure you're peeling for your team as well. If you're against a dive comp and your Mercy needs help, hang out with your Mercy and boop the Winston when he jumps. Boop that Genji when he starts getting on your Mercy. Make sure you're using that boop to peel for your squishies and for your immobile characters in the back. Just make sure that while you're doing all this, you're not just existing in the back with your team. Constantly be wall riding, but make sure you're bouncing around within your team. Make sure that you're making yourself a hard target to hit. Make sure you know when to disengage and when to speed boost your team out of there as well. Now for the last playstyle, and that's going to be Annoying or Evasive Lucio. This is a situational style that you'll be picking up every now and again in your games when you need to be either a huge distraction to the enemy team or stall out a point. A lot like a tracer in the backline of the enemy team. Sometimes you're a big enough threat that the team has to worry about you. Sometimes you can get environmental kills off the maps, or you can boop their front line away. Sometimes situations just call for an annoying Lucio. Now, a perfect example of this is when you're in overtime and you need to stall out a point until your team can get back there to back you up. In this clip right here, I end up stalling this point out for 30 seconds until my team can get back here, help me out, and then retake the point. We actually ended up pushing it to the end and winning this game. Now, the other time you're going to need an annoying Lucio is when you need to distract the enemy team. If the enemy team happens to be easily distracted, take advantage of that. If you can pull one person's attention from the enemy team, the fight's a 5-on-5. But if you can pull at least two people's attention onto just you, the fight is now a 5-on-4 in your teammate's favor. In this clip right here, you can see I have both the Roadhog and the Lucio's full attention. Even the Hanzo tries to get in on trying to shoot me. Either way, I've got a lot of the enemy team distracted. If you can get away with it, you're doing plenty by taking all the enemy bullets and making sure none of those bullets are going at your teammates. Now, keep in mind, this is not always going to work. Realistically, this team should have ignored me completely and probably started going for the enemy team until I actually became a threat, because on a map like this, I'm not going to be able to do much on 3 people in the backline of an enemy team. But if they are distracted that easily, just take advantage of it and don't complain. Congratulations, you just made it through the entire video and you now know all of the basics of playstyles that you're going to need when playing Lucio. The catch is putting it all together. All 3 of these playstyles, you will need to juggle between them within the same game. As mentioned previously, Lucio is incredibly versatile. Your main healer died? Well, you're healing him now. Stick with your team. If your team can't get that last 20 health off the support in the backline, chase that down. Your team needs the high ground? Take it. Do what a support needs to do and support your team. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys have any questions or comments, or if I didn't cover anything that you wanted an answer for, leave it in a comment down below. I'll make sure I reply as soon as I can. This is Gumby, and I have no idea how to end a video.